I have this silly notion that if you're going to spend, I don't want to give the percentage, X% of your life at work, it should be fun. Working incredibly hard and being incredibly disciplined is not antithetical to having fun.
Great. So welcome, everyone. I just want to introduce George Barrett to you all. George received his Bachelor of Arts degree from Brown University and a Master of Business Administration from New York University. He also holds an honorary Doctor of Humane Letters degree from Long Island Arnold and Marie Schweitz College of Pharmacy and Health Sciences.
You put that on the back of your jersey.
Yeah, that's a big one, right? He is the CEO and runs Cardinal Health. And George, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Westport, Connecticut, in what we used to call the toll booth state. If any of you remember, Connecticut was just strings of toll booths. So in Westport, Connecticut.
And can you tell us a little bit about your childhood?
Yeah, so I'm the, the fourth of 5 children. I have the classic fourth child personality. I don't know what that means, but I have it. I am the son of a teacher poet, my mom, and my dad, who's a psychologist and psychotherapist. And I grew up in a really wonderful environment with a giant family and an amazing community. Actually, it was a very interesting community when Connecticut, this whole part of Connecticut is historically a very sort of traditional bedroom community part of the state. Westport, where I grew up, was always this artist community, which was sort of interesting. Tons of jazz musicians and theater people and writers, and so it had sort of a unique vibe to it. And it was a very fun place to grow up, a place very committed to public things, and so I had a really, really nice youth. Great place to grow up.
Okay, all right. Tell us, what does Cardinal Health do?
Oh, hell if I know. Yeah, so let me give you the quick description. Cardinal is, we call ourselves a health services company, but we do many things. We're a large corporation. We're publicly traded. We are now somewhere around number 19 or 20 or 21 in the Fortune 500. We are known by many as a distribution company. We do pharmaceutical distribution. We do distribution of medical surgical supplies, lab equipment and supplies, many things that are used throughout hospitals and pharmacies and clinics and surgery centers all over the country. But we actually do a lot more than that. We provide all kinds of services. We work with oncologists to help them improve the efficiency of their practices. We help them analyze their own data to develop what we call clinical pathways. We're in the area of nuclear medicine, where we compound radioisotopes that are used in cardiac imaging and in diagnostic imaging. We like to call this our melting ice cube business. We actually have to compound these products and get them essentially into the patient within about 3 hours, because the radioactive isotopes have a very short half-life. And so we're in that business. We provide consulting services to hospitals and pharmacies to help them run their practices. So we have a great number of service business. We're the largest producers of surgical kits in the country. So if you went in for surgery, there's about a 75% chance that the physician would be using a sterile pack kit that they'd be using. Cardinal would have assembled and provided and, in fact, produced some of the products in that kit. So a lot of things that we do.
We like global company,
we are a global
or
company.
Just national?
We are heavily North America commercially, but we've expanded quite significantly in China of recent. We have operations around the world. We have about 33,000 people.
33,000 people?
33,000 people.
Wow.
About 2/3 of them are here in the United States. We've got about 6,000 people here in Columbus, five, somewhere in that range. 4,200, I'm exaggerating. So between 4,000 and 5,000 people here in Central Ohio. Company was founded here.
Why?
Why? The founder is a guy named Bob Walters, who many of you probably know or know of, and Bob started a business, 40 years ago. Does that sound right, Mike? 40 years ago in the distribution of primarily foods, and realized that the pharmaceutical distribution industry was extremely fragmented. There were hundreds and hundreds of companies that did this, and that it was really something that needed to be done at much larger scale. And Bob built a very exciting business and began to attract great people like some of the folks we have here. And so Cardinal has had a nice growth over 40 years. There are very few companies that get from nothing to $100 billion of sales in such a short period of time. And
Wow.
Cardinal has been able to do that, so it's been a very
Can I
very
have one of
exciting
those billions?
place. You can look at them.
I can look
You can
at
look
them
at them.
because I can be very creative, you know. So, how long have you been working? Did you start in a lesser position and work your way up, George?
You always start in a lesser position.
This always reminds me at Cardinal.
Yes, actually,
Okay.
I came in about 4 years ago.
Yep. Okay.
And I was brought in as part of a succession plan. So I came in as vice chairman, and then about a year later became
To
chairman and CEO.
Columbus.
I came to Columbus.
Uh-huh.
I'd been living in Philadelphia, where I'd been working for about a decade, or the Philadelphia area. So I came here from Philadelphia.
Right. So, what qualities do you think that you possess, or that have gotten you where you are? I mean, where?
Goodness.
And you need to. I know that's hard because you're going to have to brag about yourself, and you don't want to do that. But what do you think is the reason that you are now the CEO of Cardinal?
A question I ask myself often.
Yeah.
So I think more than anything, I have had a knack for finding really talented people, and I surround myself with them. So I have stolen liberally from everyone I've ever worked with, as I said, including some people here in the room. I was.
So you did that prior to being the CEO. You were finding talented people and getting them
I think that anyone who leads any great leader.
Yeah.
And again, not calling myself, but I think anyone who's successful leads by creating an environment in which others can thrive. And
talent attracts talent.
Talent is the huge ingredient in most success stories, and Cardinal has done that certainly in its own right. But throughout my career, I've really looked hard to find people that I think are talented, but also who complement me. I really do believe that you've got to create, and this is maybe a little bit from my upbringing in sports, the right kind of team. And not everybody has to be the high-flying dunker scorer. You need to find the right mix of people that complement you. So I would say that the defining characteristic of my career, I've probably never been qualified exactly for the job that I got, but I was fortunate to get opportunities, and then I was able to assemble really talented teams that helped me shine, but mostly they did a lot of the stuff.
So what qualities do you think you have that you besides drawing talented people towards you? Because that is true, I think, for any company and any creativity and whatever. But I think that what do you think that you have?
This is a hard one to answer, and we'd
But I think
probably get a better answer from people I work with. But I think I've had some comfort throughout my career in being able to step back from the moment and look at the strategic aspects of where I am and where my organization is, and at the same time be intimate enough and close enough to the people that are working sort of in the belly of the beast. And so I think for most leaders, the ability to sort of navigate between the strategic and the tactical, the operational and the big picture is important. And I think in some ways I have a little bit of a eclectic background. And maybe I'll share some of this because it may shed some light, I guess, on why I'm here tonight.
Yeah.
In terms of the discussion of creativity. So my youth was filled with two things: sports and music. And it's not just my youth. It has been sort of true through my life. I was a crazed athlete through most of my young years in high school and college. Very important, a central part of sort of who I am and how I see myself. And it informed a lot about the way I lead, and we can come back to that. But I also had this other great love, which was music. And I mentioned my parents, but my family really is a family of musicians, and that's always been a big part of life for them. So it may be that that background gave me a little bit of a different perspective than some others. And so I remember getting to business school and looking around, and it was hard to find other music majors. I had a degree in history and a degree in music. And I remember feeling very self-conscious about it, sort of, thinking, gosh, this is a real deficiency. I didn't major in engineering or economics or business major, and I really enjoyed my studies in the liberal arts. And I think what I came to realize that thing which at times in my early career I thought of as a deficiency, I came to understand as a bit of a strength. That I might, because of that background, see things differently than others, that maybe my creative juices were a little bit different than the way other people saw what they were doing, and how they would lead and how they saw the development of whatever organization they were in. So I think in some ways those two activities in my life, my sports and my music, completely inform who I am and the way I lead and the way I interact with people and what I see in people. And so I think that's probably helped contribute to my career in terms of just having a little bit of a different perspective and seeing things through a different lens, perhaps than others.
Right. So when you're recruiting, when you're recruiting for Cardinal, for Columbus or wherever, what do you look for in people? What don't you want to see, and what do you want to see in them?
It's a great question. It really depends where in the organization. So at the senior level, someone who might be working for me is sort of a unique search process, because at the senior level of an organization of our size, most people are incredibly competent. So
yeah, they have the same credentials.
They have enormously
impressive
credentials.
Yeah. So how do you choose?
So you're looking for a couple of things. You're looking for curiosity, passion. You're looking for a track record, an unbroken track record of success, the ability to, even in the face of obstacles. So I often, when I'm interviewing someone, I really want to sort of try to find something a moment where they've had to overcome something. Everybody at this level has successes, and so what I'm curious about is the failures and how did you deal with them and what did you learn from them. And so I think it's about, again, finding people that have a passion for what they do, a real curiosity for the world about them, a toughness in that they have a sense of how to overcome adversity.
Which is what artists do.
Artists have to deal with a lot of adversity.
Yeah, but
it's like rejection all the time.
The artistic process.
By the way,
completely.
for those of you who don't know Kevin, we've gotten to know each other here in town. Kevin is a very successful actor and Broadway actor, so he knows something about. They care, so he knows something about success and probably all actors' failure, I'm sure. But so I'm also looking for fit, by the way, because I do think that the jigsaw puzzle of a team.
You mentioned to me once in an earlier discussion about humility and the idea of that, and in terms of, I think for young people who are interviewing for positions and everyone has the same kind of credentials, I think they think that they should be. Yeah, so can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, there's sort of two aspects to this. One is probably my own personal preference, but that's very personal. Everybody has their different style. Some of it is also an understanding of your organization and your culture. And I think some of this has to do, and this, you guys can jump all over me and throw things, but I think there's something about the Midwest that is different than what I experienced my entire life in the Northeast. And I really noticed this at Cardinal, in that people are very quick to respond to newcomers, incredibly welcoming. They'll give you the benefit of the doubt, but they don't want you to come in showing them how smart you are every second. There is sort of this understanding, my perception of being here, that there's a high premium on humility. Sometimes, by the way, too much. We can come back to that. Okay. Sometimes we get in our own way. We're so humble here. But I do think a person has to be able to come into an organization and get a following. And I think followership is extremely important. And so if you're so busy blowing yourself up and you're so busy making it about you, it's really hard to get people to want to follow you. And so I do think that I look for, I want a person who's incredibly confident and self-assured.
Yes.
So
But there's a difference.
But there's exactly.
Right.
So you can be completely confident, self-assured, competent, knowledgeable about your field, demonstrate that, and at the same time show respect for others that is very palpable.
And listen to others' ideas.
Listen to others. Be aware that it's not all about you. Shelley Bird and I talk about this often. We about this notion of leadership as a team sport, which I really love, because that's true, leadership as a team sport. So I think there is an issue about humility that allows others to get on board. And then when they get on board, and what I've experienced here, certainly at Cardinal, and I would say in Columbus generally, is people are incredibly supportive. Once they believe in you, and they believe that you are looking after their greater good as much as you're looking after your own, then people will be there for you.
Right. You mentioned earlier about the idea of people who have overcome failure and whatever. What do you think you were overcoming? What do you think your failure was that you overcame?
How much time do you have?
I don't know. We've got another, I don't know. It's going to take about 40 minutes.
There have been really a great many in my life. So,
okay. And we're going to talk about your successes too. So don't worry about it.
I'm happy to talk about failures.
Yeah.
No,
it'd be hard to say. It's an interesting notion that people who have gone through, really.
You can actually make it less loaded and talk it. It doesn't have to be failure. It can be obstacles.
Okay,
failure
so
has
obstacles.
So there are a lot. I think for me, it's been a number along the course of my life. Probably the first and the most dramatic for me was actually an injury, a sports injury, that sort of changed the trajectory of my career a little bit. And I had a very fortunate, blessed upbringing in many ways, and a lot of good things had happened to me. And then suddenly, it seemed like my whole world was crashing. And that happened my senior year in high school, and at a time where I was being very heavily recruited from colleges, and I very quickly realized that I was actually no longer valuable as I went through this experience. It was really important for me to go through that. I wound up recovering, and I was able to play again in college, thankfully. But and then of course proceeded to re-injure myself and end my career. But it was really important, I think, to have a setback and even to to sort of draw on myself to figure out how I was going to respond to that. And I think all of us have resources that we can draw on that we don't necessarily know we can draw on. And those happen. Everyone in this room has some story, something that's happened in your life that is tragic or sad or stops you in your tracks. I think it's important when you lead to realize that you're leading 33,000 people, every one of whom has a story. And for me, my story of the challenges started there. And but it was an important lesson for me. It also, so it told me something about adversity. It challenged me to have to deal with the fact that I had to watch others succeed while I was recovering. Wasn't going to be the center of attention. That I had to try to figure out some of the things to feel rewarded by.
Yep.
And it was also a good time for me to explore some things in my music, which I was able to do. And this, when I re-injured myself in college, this was sort of the key moment, because I had real aspirations about life after college and playing for a while after college. And when I realized that wasn't going to happen, I didn't really know where to fall. And I was very fortunate that I had some of the things that I loved, that I was passionate about, and I had a community of people who were ready to catch me when I fell, which was also important about overcoming adversity. And it was largely people involved in my academic world, but also mostly in the music world. And so anyway, that was one. I would say along the way, there have been plenty of business failures, decisions that I've made that I regret, choices that I've made, time that I've missed with my family. Those are kinds of failures when you look back. But you do the best you can in pulling the pieces back together, and and not spending all your time obsessing about what went wrong, but trying to figure out what to do with it going forward. So I guess the thing that I've learned most about failure, about adversity, is you can't undo the past. You can live your life now and live it forward. So anyway, I think most people here have had various failures along the way, but you learn from them. You learn much more quickly from failure than you do from
falling
success.
down. Yeah.
I mean, the fastest learning, and we always, when we talk in the company about putting people in new jobs, we stretch them. We try to stretch them into places where it's possible they may fail, and that's important because the learning from that is extraordinarily powerful. So you learn so quickly. Think of all the bad moments you've had and how quickly you learn from them, and you learn much more quickly than sort of patting yourself in the back about your successes.
Mm-hmm. What do you think is your greatest accomplishment in your lifetime?
Sounds like it's about to end, doesn't it? It sounds ominous.
It's like, what's his name who got an honorary Oscar who said, "Does it mean I'm dying?"
Exactly.
I'm only 48 years old. What the hell? No. I don't mean that. What I mean is, what do you think your most impressive accomplishment has been?
Probably, I mean,
I'm sure on a business level and on a personal level.
On a personal level, and probably on every level, it's my family.
Mm-hmm.
I have a great family. My inner family, Debbie, my wife, is here. My kids are amazing. I am really proud.
Is Emma here?
No.
Is
Emma's
Emma
gone.
here? No. Okay.
So I've got three children.
That's how
They're
amazing
all,
she is. She's not even here. I'm kidding.
Three kids who are all terrific. But what's most terrific about them, and I know Debbie feels this way, I feel very proud about this. The thing that I hear about them, which I always love hearing, is they're really good kids. They're not so much kids anymore. They have great values. They look after other people. So they're people that I feel have character already, even though they're still forming. So that's probably the single biggest accomplishment. Professionally, I don't really know what to say about that. I've loved.
Well, I mean, you are CEO of one of the top 20 companies in the country,
true. Yeah.
So I guess that's a success story.
Yeah, I mean,
but other than the obvious, what do you? I mean, on a business level, what do you think?
I guess the success is that I've sort of been able to adapt to different worlds as a leader. So,
and do you think that has to do with the team building that you learned in sports and music and making music with other people and learning how to work with other people through basically creativity? Basically, because playing sports is a creative endeavor.
It is.
I want to get the new coach of the Ohio State football team here to talk to him, because I think it's all. I mean, I think what everyone deals with creativity, and they don't even realize it. Some of them.
So I think creativity connects to something else, which is sort of adaptability.
Yep.
And so I think what I'm proud of is
collaborative.
I've been able to be in very different kinds of organizations and thrive and feel at home. So very, very small organizations early in my career where I knew everybody by name. We knew each other's families, to suddenly being part of a global company that was headquartered in Norway, having to bounce back and forth, to joining a global Israeli company and going back and forth to Israel every 4 weeks, to being part of Cardinal right here in the Midwest with a good old American culture. And I feel in some ways like I've enjoyed every one of the changes. So I think the reason I've had some success is that I really love that aspect of it, the change of the humanness of it.
You can adapt.
That culture.
You can adapt to whatever, wherever.
And I've been lucky to be able to adapt. And I think, is it partly from my upbringing? It may be. It's hard to analyze. I think part of it is I just love people, and that makes life a little easier. Part of it is that I do bring from those two parts of my life some things that have helped me. Again, from sports, a belief that teams create better things than individuals in a collection, that you can overcome adversity, but it really helps if you stick together.
Yeah.
That winning together is a lot more fun than winning alone.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And my basic competitiveness, which is that I hate to lose, is sort of I took from my sports life. From my music world, it's, I think, the tendency to see between the lines, and we've talked about this a little before, but I think I sometimes look through a situation maybe differently than others, and the awful and maybe overstated analogy is when you study music, you are trained, and ideally you have some of this innately, to sort of look between the lines. A musician is not generally in a symphony, who's listening to a symphony, they're not hearing the main theme, the melody, which might be carried by the violin or the flute at a given moment. They're hearing the inner lines, which is hidden there in the oboe and in the cello and in a baritone horn. So I hear those things. That's when I'm listening to something, I'm hearing this stuff.
So when you're
in
in
business,
a
I do the
board
same thing.
meeting, so you're in a board meeting, you're hearing the voice that's clearest to you of saying the right things.
I'm trying to
Is that what you're
listen
saying?
between. I'm trying to hear what's not being said.
Ah, okay.
So,
that's great.
So I think in my world, it's usually so complicated
Yeah.
that you can't gather everything as it is. See, there's a million moving parts, and so what you're trying to do is you're trying to pull the essence out of a situation.
Right.
That may not be the obvious. That may be something that's hidden in the viola, to use the analogy. So.
That's the real meat of the issue.
That may be the meat of the issue. So
Right.
when I'm in a meeting, what I hope to be able to do, and sometimes I'm successful at it, and sometimes I am a giant flop. What I'm hoping to be able to do is to pull out what is the essence of this issue. And I know I drive some of our people crazy sometimes. No, I don't want to hear anymore. Is this the issue? So, and sometimes they'll say, no, George, you sort of missed it. But there are plenty of times where that's what I'm trying to do, which is that's the role I'm trying to play, which is to try to get to the essence of an issue. And I do think that the training in music and sort of the creative impulse in me is looking for that. Now, it can also lead you astray, so you have to sort of be disciplined about looking for the right stuff. But
Right.
I try to do that.
Right. What is your typical day like? What do you do?
There's truly no typical day. I'm seeing my colleagues laugh. Every day is completely different. Every day is like its own universe, which is why, for me, it is so much fun. I wake up in the morning, I get to work, and I know all hell is going to break loose. Not necessarily bad, not disorderly, but that every day is going to be an adventure. It may be something completely tactical, something that we're working on that a team they're ready to move down a path and they just want a little bit of input from me just to bounce it off me. It may be a something that's happened and suddenly we've got a media frenzy and some issue we've got to tackle. It could be we've got a human resource issue with an executive, someone who's ready to move on in their career and feeling like they've got an opportunity outside, and suddenly we need to intervene and think about that. It can be anything. That is the great joy of my work. It's I guess, a little bit of the lucky part about being the boss, which is you get to pick the issues that you get involved in, but they sort of pick you as well. So there is very little routine in my job. We have a couple of things that we do as a group that are routine, that are very important disciplines for any large organization that are part of the system of making a large enterprise run. But outside of those very orderly things and very necessary systematic things, my days are pretty variable.
Right.
Variable.
So, how do you go about recruiting here in Columbus? How can Cardinal help Columbus be a more vital, exciting city to live in? Because I think recruiting people for here is difficult. Yeah.
It's been a really interesting story, and I'll share this with you. When I arrived, I was nervous that. Again, I came from the East. The perception of Ohio was either cornfields or Rust Belt, right? People in the East, the traditional caricature, which is that we don't see past the river in New York. So the Hudson River is the end of the world. So
yes.
I wasn't sure what it would be like to attract people, to be able to recruit people here. Here's what I discovered. It's a really vibrant, warm welcoming place. And so if we could get people on an airplane, we could get them. That once
they get here,
if
get
we
them
could
from
get,
somewhere else on
if
that
we
plane.
could get
Yep.
people to give it a shot, they would see a city that has sports and music and theater and restaurants and good-sized enterprises and big health systems and a vibrant young population, a pretty diverse population. So I really felt like the key was convincing people when I was recruiting from outside to get on the plane. Once we could get them on the plane, we really had a good shot of getting people to stay here. And then the key was building the right team internally and attracting a few people. And then again, we talked about it earlier, talent attracts more talent. So the more people that you have that others want to work with.
But there's something that you do that works, because I mean, I've just had a personal experience with someone who was recruited by Nationwide and turned them down, and because they didn't want to live in Columbus. So how do you feel, what do you feel that Cardinal does? They meet you and they go, good Lord, I want to work with him?
No. Here's the truth. The truth is we
Isn't
all
he
get
great?
we all get
here.
turned.
I mean, I've just had this actually happen.
So
and it was a good offer and a great offer and whatever.
Yeah.
So what do you think? What do you think Cardinal has that maybe other places don't?
So a couple of things. One part is we all get turned down. Again, that's part of life.
Yes.
And all of us want the best talent in the world, and so does everybody else. And so it's a very competitive world out there getting talent to join the already great team we've got. I think we're in Cardinal is in an interesting part of the economy. Healthcare is an extraordinary place, and I've spent now 3 decades in it, which is sort of hard to believe. It's an extraordinary place because even if you are behind the scenes in the healthcare, which is what we are, Cardinal Health is largely that guy behind the curtain. We're the business behind healthcare. So what I tell our employees all the time, when we do our work really well, physicians and pharmacists and nurses and nurse practitioners, they can do their work dealing with patients, and we'll deal with all the tough stuff behind the curtain. So we have a role in caring for people. Having a purpose that matters does make it easier to recruit. And again, that's not a knock against any other kind of institution that may be involved in something that on the surface may feel less noble. What every leader has to do is ennoble the purpose of what they do, no matter what you lead. But I think for us, it's a little easier in that our people really take seriously what they do, so that we don't, when a tornado flattened a pharmacy in Joplin, Missouri, we didn't have to ask Cardinal people to work literally 24 hours a day for a week, putting it back together again. Nobody got paid to do it. It just because it's sort of part of the purpose. So I think we have an advantage in some ways in that what we do, we can say to ourselves all the time that it matters. If we do our work really well, that it helps people. So I think that helps us. The other thing is just trying to create an environment that people want to be in, and
how does Cardinal Health do that? I mean, how do we help Columbus become? Because I think there's a lot of things that can be done that aren't happening, and culturally. And how does Cardinal fit into that sort of? I mean, this is one obvious example, and various other things, but sort of the cultural life of Columbus. How do you feel about that?
So here's what I'd say. I don't know if you can separate the cultural life from. I mean, to me, you have to think of the city and its assets in a very holistic way. So we are a city. We have to see ourselves as a city that has great institutions, that has some world-class businesses that help the economy grow, that has this incredible university and a bunch of universities and students everywhere, that has arts, it has restaurants, all those things matter. You can't sort of take one from. It's not a zero-sum game. You can't say, well, we're going to try to grow the economy, but we're not going to pay attention to these other things. I think when we present ourselves as a city that is on the move, it's all that stuff that matters.
Right.
So one of the reasons that we've become, I don't know if you've noticed, but we've become much more active in Columbus over the last 3 or 4 years. So why do we do that? Part
Good
of it is
question.
part of it is selfish.
Yeah.
Part of it is selfish, which is if Columbus. Now remember, we're in Dublin, Ohio, right? So we're technically not in Columbus, but we think of ourselves as in the Columbus
Do
area.
people think you're trying to get them to Ireland when you tell them?
I
to
tell
come to
people we're
Dublin?
in Ireland if I'm recruiting and I'm trying to get them on the plane,
That's great.
and then it
just lie.
and then it just detours west.
Yes, I think
and
that. Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
completely discombobulated.
Exactly.
So we part of it is selfish, which is that the more active we are,
Yeah.
and the more active our people are, the more excited they are about the community, the more that we give, the more that the place becomes an exciting place. If everybody does that, the easier it is for us to thrive here and for us to attract more talented people. So there's sort of a virtuous cycle
Yeah.
to it. So we've been very excited about increasing our presence. I'm not. There's probably not a single person in my executive committee that's not serving on a board here of a nonprofit or some institution, and it makes them more passionate about what they're doing, and it makes them feel better about their work.
Do you have time to do that? Be on a board of?
I do.
You do.
I do.
Okay.
I don't. Let me rephrase it. I do it. Whether I have time to do it is a different
Right.
story.
Yeah.
I do serve on the board of the Children's Hospital here at Nationwide, which has been a great joy.
Uh-huh.
I'm very active in the Columbus Partnership, and active, as you know, in a number of other areas here in town, and active in a bunch of things in Washington and the Business Roundtable and the Healthcare
And you've been
Leadership
very
Council.
generous to the museum.
Well, I can't take credit for it. My predecessor and people who preceded me were
But
really,
you will be in the future.
We have been.
Nanette made me say that. No, she didn't.
So I will tell you that one of the things that about creating a place where people want to work. I have this silly notion that if you're going to spend, I don't want to give the percentage, X% of your life at work, it should be fun.
You
So
said that earlier. I thought that was
it
interesting.
really-
when you said it, you thought it was going to be fun when you got to work. Yeah.
I think that working incredibly hard and being incredibly disciplined is not antithetical to having fun. These are false dichotomies.
Well, that's the
that,
thing.
that the
That's
joy-
what artists do. They love what they're doing.
that's
I mean, that's the whole point. I mean, they love what they're doing. They love being on stage. They love playing their instrument. They love making a painting. They love to do whatever they love to do.
well. There are
And-
studies on the studies about people when they study people how people learn.
Yeah.
And the difference when they're excited about a subject and when they're not, regardless of their raw capacity, regardless of their horsepower, when they're passionate about something, totally different learning curve.
Yeah.
So the translation of business is, if you can get people excited about their work,
Yeah.
they're going to be really good at it.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. I think you do that. I can see that.
I don't know.
Why do you what do you think what would you say why do you think we became such good friends so quickly?
So
Very fast.
So partly people sort of realized that there was a music connection between us, which is one of those bonds that can make people connect very quickly, as can sports, as does any. So when you share a passion for something, and I really have.
Well, but it's interesting because I had no idea who you were, and you had no idea who I was. Not that I'm anybody, but I'm just saying that we met sort of, and we became friends very quickly, I felt. And we had a lot of things in common, and I think that's part of why people are attracted to coming to Cardinal to work, because of what I saw. When I mean, I know that's hard for you to hear probably, but it's interesting. So what were you going to say about?
I have no idea.
Okay. But yeah, the music connection.
Yeah.
Sort of a creative connection.
Yeah.
That we had. Yeah. That was a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you aspire to be a CEO when you were younger, or what did you think you were going to do?
So I would say
are
this.
we okay out here?
When
Is
I was,
everybody is this interesting? You're all okay? Okay. All right.
By the way, I
once in a
bullied.
while.
I tried to bully many more people at Cardinal to come today. I told them that their jobs were on the line. So only a few people took it seriously enough to come.
You can talk to them on Monday.
So So I remember somewhere in my life, and it was probably high school or something. Someone talking to me about sort of what you want to be when you grow up, and I remember saying, I really don't know anything but being a businessman. That was the only thing I didn't want to be, was a businessman, and partly because I came. I came from, my parents would deny this completely, and of course they may hear this. My dad's 90 and my mom's 89, so they won't hear it quite as well as they used to. But in my family, the things that were highly regarded, I mean, that were just held in high esteem, were writers and intellectuals and musicians.
Who's your favorite writer?
I don't think, I am such a scattered reader. I don't think I'd say I have a favorite writer. I can be reading.
Do you read? I mean,
I do.
Obviously you read. But
Yeah,
I mean, do
I do.
you take the time to read a
I
book?
do. I
Okay.
do. I try to read it at night for the 4 seconds that I'm conscious.
Exactly.
But and I read when I travel, and I
understand
do try to read.
completely.
So anyway, in my family, there were no business people anywhere. All musicians, professors, teachers, writers. So it just wasn't part of the model that I grew up with. It never really occurred to me, and it wasn't. So when it's not in your language, you just don't think about it. So I never thought about it, actually. I thought, when I got to college, I had hoped that I would play pro soccer for a couple of years if I was lucky and held together. And then maybe I'd go to law school. And by the way, there was no particularly good reason for me to be thinking.
But you went to business school, so
Yeah.
why did you do
so
that?
that's a whole. So what happened was, as I mentioned, I had an injury.
Yes.
A recurring injury that ended my career in my junior season. And at that point, the first aspiration I described to you went away, which was a little bit heartbreaking at the time. But I was already very involved in music, and I had sort of had this deal with the music department at Brown, which is during soccer season, which was sort of a joke because it was 20.
How did you juggle all that?
Not that well, but I tried. Basically, during the peak of the season, I did a limited amount of singing, but I was able to sort of fake my way through it. And I had incredibly supportive people in the music department who just basically said, "We'll take you when we can get you." Because I said, "Look, I'm going to be disruptive. I'm going to be missing lots of rehearsals," and they were incredibly great about it. So
Were you
I
in
just
plays?
Pardon?
Were you in musicals?
No, I
and
didn't.
plays
There was
there?
no way I could have done. No,
just music.
I did
Right.
all kinds of music.
Okay.
All kinds of music. So so I thought, so somewhere along the line, the chairman of the music department at Brown said to me, "I know you're getting a degree in history. You've got to get a degree in music. This is gonna be a part of your life somewhere, and I think you should get a music degree." I'm like, it's already sophomore year now. It means I'm going to have almost no electives, and I don't really want to. But he convinced me to do it. So off I went and decided to get a music degree, and I was doing a lot of singing during this stretch. And somewhere during my senior year, when I was trying to figure out whether I was going to take the law boards and what I was going to do, he, without talking to me, sent a tape of mine to someone who was a vocal coach at the Met, someone in New York, and came to me one day and said, "What are you doing on Thursday?" And I said, "I'm doing what I always do here at school on Thursday." "Why?" He said, "Well, you got to go to New York." I said, "For what?" And he said, "You've got to go sing for this."
Don't you always drink on Thursday in college?
Yeah. Wednesday.
Yeah, Wednesday. Yeah.
So anyway, so
Hump
off I
day.
went to New York to audition for this person. Honestly, I don't even know
At the
completely
Met?
So she was a vocal coach there. So the truth is, I never really thought about being an opera singer. I was doing all kinds of music. I was doing jazz and pop and classical music. I just was so flattered I went.
Amazing.
I honestly didn't really know why I went, except that I was flattered, and it seemed like
Yeah.
rude not to go. So off I went, and then a couple of weeks later, I got this call saying, "Come to New York." So at that point, I thought, well, I'll go to New York, and I'll sing. So off I went to New York. Then, of course, I realized when you go to New York to sing, nobody's like paying you right up front to do that. And if you're going to study classically, you have to train. And if you're going to do classical music, you probably have to study Italian and German and French, and you actually have to make money. And so this same teacher, who turned out to be a great mentor of mine, said, "Well, you could look, you'll get a job teaching, because first of all, you could teach and you can coach, so you're a cheap date. And so someone will hire you. You know, you could teach 2 subjects, and and you can coach, and so I wound up in.
So you did that?
So I taught for a couple of years in New York. And
Where did
coached.
you
And
teach?
so I taught at a school called Collegiate School, which was the oldest private school in the country.
Yes.
Which had a lot of very interesting and challenging, famous kids. And then I taught at Horace Mann for a couple of years after
You
that.
taught at Horace Mann as well?
So anyway, so I taught and coached soccer and baseball, and it was great fun. But meanwhile, I was sort of singing in New York. Anyway, it's this whole long story, which I won't go into great detail about, but I was thinking, at some point I realized I had to make a decision about my life and whether or not I really wanted to live the life of a musician. And I wasn't sure that the answer was yes. But I realized I loved being on stage, and I loved being in the studio. So the singing and the music part, all the music part I loved.
Yeah.
The rest of it I hated. I realized that I didn't like the turning day into night. I didn't like the
rejection.
Yeah, but that's probably true. That's probably
Yep.
true.
Very difficult.
So I'd gotten to know Debbie, who was a classmate at Brown, and I was thinking at that time about going to law school. I'd gotten to know her dad while we were dating. He was a guy that was in the pharmaceutical business. He had a business and some partners that were starting a new business, and we had a series of conversations about, have you ever thought about business? And I gave him the answer that I gave you, which is the only thing I wanted not to be in my life was a business person, and he convinced me that maybe I should. He was an extraordinary guy. Think about business, and I sort of just plunged into this little startup business, and went back and got an MBA in corporate strategy during nights and weekends over 4 years.
And you realized you enjoyed it.
Somehow it just
You could do this.
Yeah, somehow it felt comfortable.
Yeah, it felt right.
So yeah.
So would you say he's one of the questions I had was who was the greatest influence on your life?
It's probably a composite picture, but Dick Nemeth was certainly one of them. He was the first. I had a picture in my mind of the business person, and he broke all those rules. He was a sculptor. He probably read a book every 2 days, if not a book a day.
Wow.
He was a voracious reader, but passionate about his business, very good at what he did, and so he was a great mentor. But I've been really lucky to have a lot of people that have influenced my life and my career. I mentioned that professor. My parents have had a huge impact on the way I see the world, but also people that have worked for me. And this is something I really feel strongly about, that if you think that you just learn from people that are hierarchically above you in an organization, then
That's a big mistake. That's a big
you learn
mistake.
from. I've learned as much or more from people who've worked for me
Right.
than I've learned from people that I've worked for.
That's absolutely
And
right.
so it's sort of this 360 way of thinking about learning. So I've had a lot of great mentors, and some of them were people that worked for me.
Right. I mean, when I taught acting at NYU, I used to say I've learned much more from you than you have from me. You know, they taught me more than I think you can only kind of teach what you need to learn yourself.
If you're not learning from the people around you, you have the wrong people around
Did I
you.
just say that? Does that make sense? But yeah,
Yeah.
that's absolutely right. It's absolutely right. So you were able to juggle all this. Who's your favorite painter? Do you have a favorite
This is going to
painting in
sound,
the
yeah.
museum here?
I would probably say this is so cliche. I'm not a great
What
expert in
kind
the
of-
arts,
what
but
kind of
Picasso. I
art-
think
what-
Picasso for me still is extraordinary in that he sort of broke every rule every step along the way.
Uh-huh.
So every time there was some glass to be broken,
Right.
he
did
broke
it.
Yeah, and so I'm always sort of struck by but I also really love looking at sculpture, and I don't know, and Rodin. I mean, I love looking at things that are I tend to be sort of physical
Tactile.
about yeah. And so
As
I
opposed
love
to- as
I
opposed to
love
visual.
I love looking at sculpture, but yeah.
Are there any Picassos in this museum, Nanette? 5. Okay. See, there's 5. That's great. Composers. What composers do you like?
So this is going to be a big list. So first of all, again, I'm going to quote my wife. If you listen to the music that I love and that I listen to, it's sort of all over the place. Debbie, who has a store, once in her store in Philadelphia, decided that it would be a good idea to take my iPod playlist and put it on in the store and just hit play and shuffle. And it was like a psychotic episode. It went from Led Zeppelin to Miles Davis to Fritz Wunderlich doing Schumann Lieder to La Boheme to So there are a couple of composers who just knock me over, and they're from different genres. Mozart, obviously, and Beethoven to me, and probably Bach are the three from the classical world that have always knocked my socks off, and probably Dvorak on some level because such an incredible melodist. I have loved so much of what Lennon and McCartney wrote as the Beatles. Holland Dozier and whoever the other, I forgot the third of the great Motown writers, was just an extraordinary writer. I think if you listen to the great works of jazz, I love Hoagie Carmichael's work. They're just
so
fantastic.
it's a wide spectrum.
It's a pretty wide spectrum.
Yeah. I think that's. What's your favorite Broadway musical?
Which ones were you in?
Several.
Les Mis.
Yeah.
He was the lead in Les Mis. That is certainly probably my favorite because it really is sort of a weird thing.
Why do you?
Because
think
it's almost a cross between a musical and an operetta.
Yeah.
So I thought
What's a rock opera sort of?
It was just. I thought it was great.
Yeah.
But West Side Story probably. Bernstein's writing was amazing.
Do
I
you
mean,
listen
it would
to
sort of
music?
fuse jazz and
Do you
classical.
listen to music while you're working
Yeah,
in your office?
sometimes.
Okay.
They're laughing.
That's great. What do you listen to?
Everything.
The
So
eclectic-
this morning was Schumann.
Uh-huh.
Yesterday I was listening to some Jobim, some Brazilian
Yeah, some Brazilian stuff. Okay.
stuff.
All
So
right.
I do.
So-
it's mostly after people leave and they don't notice that I'm listening.
So, what advice would you give? I see there's some young folks here. What advice would you give them in terms of interviewing when they interview for a job, and not necessarily for Cardinal, but just in general, or college? Your college interviews. They're difficult for people for a number of reasons because you don't want to be. You want to be humble, and you want to be modest, and you want to be all sorts of things, but at the same time, you don't want to sell yourself short. So what would you, and I think it confuses people, and I think people either come across as being sort of like know-it-alls, or, and then some people come off as being too practical, and, which is kind of a madness, but, so what advice would you give them?
This is a real. It's a hard one to find the right balance, especially early in your career. I guess the one thing I would say is that interviewers recognize passion, and so if you can demonstrate enthusiasm about why you're there, if it's about the company or the hospital you're interviewing, whatever it may be, if it's about something that you've done, that spark that you show is the exact thing that ignites the person who's listening to you and talking with you.
That you'll be a team player.
Yeah,
That
I
should be
think
part of a
that
team.
I think that is always a helpful thing. I think showing something of yourself,
Yeah.
and that's hard to do without, oversharing. But I think getting a little bit of your own personality into an interview is useful. But I don't know the magic answer to how to do this, but the advice I do give young folks early in their career often is to sort of be in the moment. I think many people early in their careers think a lot about the steps that they have to go through. So I'm charting this course. So if someone comes in for an interview, a young person, they start telling me all the things that they want to be. They want to be a CEO and they want to back in. That doesn't necessarily move me. I want someone who's in the moment, who's great at what they're doing now. That is actually the best career advice that I feel like I can give someone, which is that if you're extraordinarily good at what you do now, you will get noticed. When we have talent management meetings and we do this is a huge issue for us. We spend a lot of time and a lot of money on developing and thinking about talent. We're sitting in a meeting and we're talking about some young person coming through the organization. I've never heard somebody say, you know what I love about that person? They've got a great career plan. Not once in my career have I ever heard that. I have heard, you wouldn't believe how good this person is at everything we throw their way. And you can hear the people around the room fighting to get that person into their department.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's by the way, it's the same advice that I'm sure some acting coach gave you before you went on stage, and a soccer coach or a baseball coach told me, which is be in the moment. Don't think about the end of the game or what the score is going to be. Just hit the foul shot, make the stop, throw the ball to first base. It's about being in the moment. And I think what we often do, life has got so many things in front of us, and we worry so much about it. We get too far ahead of ourselves, and we're thinking all about the course that we want to be, and we forget just to be incredibly good. So this is when my kids say, like, what advice? This is what I tell them: just be great at what you're doing, be passionate about what you're doing, and people will notice.
It's interesting because the first time I ever did Jean Valjean was at the Kennedy Center because the Valjean, I was playing the bishop and L'Aigle, and the Valjean was
The guy with the
lost
sticks,
his
the
voice.
candlestick.
The candlestick guy, yeah. And he lost his voice, and I had not had a stage rehearsal yet. It was that new. And I'd only had a couple of music rehearsals, and Trevor Nunn said to me, have no hope, have no fear, just be free. Just go out there and do whatever you
It's hard to do, isn't it?
need to do. And I didn't even know where I was going, and I followed the light around. And I was just forcing myself to be in the moment. And
It's hard to do.
it's incredibly hard to do because I wanted to do Colm's performance.
Yeah, and you're also thinking about, boy, I hope they love me at the end.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, but if
But
they walk out,
But what you really want is just to be nailing it, right?
So what they didn't. They stood up and went crazy.
There you go.
And I hadn't even had a rehearsal. I felt like saying, you should see me. When you see me when I've had a rehearsal, it'll be incredible. Be unbelievable. But yeah, so you be in the moment in the interview.
Yep.
And you just be who you are, and you just state what you do well.
Don't be afraid to let a little of yourself come out.
And what you're thinking and what your passions are, because they're your passions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And someone will connect to them.
Well, you're kind of an extraordinary guy, George, in a number of ways. It's not for nothing that Cardinal's been so successful, I think.
I knew probably within 4 weeks of being in New York that I didn't know if I wanted to be in the world of opera. And so that was a good thing for me to realize early, because I did, but I did a lot of lieder. I did a lot of art songs. So I did a lot of Schumann, Schubert.
Your favorite lieder composer?
Probably, probably Dichterliebe, which is a wonderful cycle of Schumann. He did, and he was an incredible baritone. There was a guy that I actually liked even better who tragically died very young, but his name was Fritz Wunderlich, who was a tenor.
Of course.
And he was, it's again sort of interesting because he defined a little bit of the ideal of what a tenor. He was a little bit more of a lyric tenor, but he had such a beautiful voice; it was like velvet. And so that was a little more of my orientation, was that kind of voice rather than the blow you out of the room kind of singing. Yep.
Do you want to play a little something for us?
Will you sing?
I think you should play.
So
They don't care. They've all heard me sing. They've all heard me
no,
sing.
here. So
You just go ahead. Just go ahead and play.
no, what
No,
time
I
is it
think
here?
we're good. We're good. Wouldn't you like to hear him play a little something?
Can I just wait?
Leave
First
that
of all,
on.
Can
Leave
I
that
make
on.
can I make a suggestion here? This is a very legitimate suggestion. I'm not really a very good piano player.
Yes, he
But
is.
no, just let me finish.
Okay, I
Ask my
didn't-
wife. I rest my head.
She's gonna
I'm
tell
not really-
everybody you're not a
but
good
if-
piano player.
But if you wanted, here's the thought. If you wanted, and you wanted to sing, I'll play something from. Les
We'll
Mis.
improv.
right,
We'll do whatever you want to do.
Does that
Let's
work?
do it. Yep. Let's do that because you don't want to sing. Okay, and I also have not been singing for personal reasons for a few months. So, sure. I don't know what we're gonna do. I have no idea what he's gonna do. I don't know. Just play and I'll sing.
bring him
And well, no, we could do that. I dreamed a dream and to bring him home.
Wanna start that? Can you do
Yeah.
that?
So who knew that the CEO of Cardinal Health could play the piano?
First of all,
So if you go and interview with him, talk to him about his piano skills.
I gotta qualify this. I really am sort of a faker of a piano player, but I can accompany somebody. So that's the reality. I'm not really good. So, you ready? We're gonna try
Yep.
this.
I dreamed a dream in time gone by, when hope was high and life worth living. I dreamed that love would never die. I dreamed that God would be forgiving. Then I was young and unafraid, and dreams were made and used and wasted. There was no ransom to be paid, no song unsung, no wine untasted. But the tigers come at night, with their voice soft as thunder, as they tear your hope apart, as they turn your dream to shame. God on high, hear my prayer. In my need, you have always been there. He is young, he's afraid. Let him rest, heaven blessed. Bring him home, bring him home, bring him home. He's like the sun, I might have known. I don't know. Where are we going?
Okay?
Play something. You play something.
No, thank you.
You play something. Well, now we can talk tomorrow. We can talk tomorrow. George Barrett.